everyone. Today on Evolving the Conversation, we have Barret Pearlman, also known as the Modern Hippie. If you go onto YouTube or anywhere that you can find a podcast, or most places, right?
Yeah, everywhere. Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, YouTube.
Awesome. Yeah, we have two, and we have Melissa De Joseph, two breathwork practitioners on the podcast today. And we're here to talk about some things that, we find interesting that we have in common, plant medicines and spirituality, those types of things. So with that, all right, could you introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you for the Modern Hippie introduction. I host the Modern Hippie podcast, and I am also a psychedelic breakthrough coach.
Awesome. So how did you come to use psychedelics? What sort of called you to it?
Probably like a life-altering journey about 7 years ago when I was incredibly suicidal at that time and super depressed, and I had these mushrooms, and I hadn't done mushrooms in about 10 years. And so I decided to take them to see if anything would change. And lo and behold, taking these mushrooms, I had like my first spiritual awakening. I had that moment where in the mushrooms, I was essentially downloading a higher consciousness that came through me and walked me through how to love myself for the very first time in what was probably my entire life. And after that moment, everything shifted for me. I was so consumed with what the heck happened on these mushrooms. And if this happened once, can I recreate this? So I started using them intentionally each month. I would set time aside. I called them my mushroom journeys. And I would take mushrooms in my bedroom by myself and sit around and confront the things that came up for me. And over the course of the last 7 years, massive transformations happened in my life. The mushrooms really gave me the power to look at what was going on with me, to look deeper into what was going on with me, to apply forgiveness to that, to utilize the tools that I was learning through self-help and self-development things, and harness that in a deeper way that was expediting the process. And they rapidly helped me become the absolute best version of myself that you see before you today. And I am so grateful to them for that, and eventually really discovered that there's something I want to work with.
That's awesome. It's really awesome. I remember when I discovered this, property that cannabis has, and it sounds like you have found something similar in the spirit of the mushrooms, that it has this intelligence to it that when you really intend on using it as a medicine and you set those intentions and you find that force in the plant itself that is a medicine and you connect with that thing, that it really opens up doors for you to go through, and doors that lead to personal transformation that is best and that leads to better things for yourself.
1,000 times over. And boy, are mushrooms intelligent. They are that fungi, that mycelium that connects literally the entire world together. Underneath our footsteps, everywhere we walk, is this mycelial network that's created and held together by this fungi. And it sends information. It's like how the trees know when a storm is coming. It's how they share resources. And it's beautiful. And to be tapped into that magic has exponential benefits.
You two probably know a bit more than me, especially around ayahuasca and with mushrooms. But I notice with even types of plant medicines such as rose, like in the tea that I'm having right now, it's incredible, at least for me, that I'm aware of before, of maybe just like when I was smoking cannabis in high school, or when I was like smoking weed in college, and really not having too much mindfulness around it. But then, hearing about these people that have shamanic practices with different types of plant medicines. And actually, I was going to say too, since you two both probably have more experience with mushrooms, what would you call mushrooms? Would you put that in the plant medicine category, or would you like separate that out and put it in its own category of like, I don't know, fungi medicine or mushroom medicine? I was having this discussion with my Spanish teacher earlier today, and he was saying like, "Oh, when you say like plant medicine, when you say like plant medicines, you just like most people just think of like ayahuasca and things like that." But I'm like, "Oh, no, 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 it's not like that. Like I'm like giving it like a really, really big, broad category and placing like all kinds of plants that have, a medicinal value into that category."
For me personally, I lump them into plant medicine. I think they could be fungi medicine or the broader category even of natural medicines, which is like where bufo and cambo fall into as well. But they're just, I think mushrooms they're not very particular. Like they're not upset that we're calling them plants. They're just like, use us, please. Like everyone needs healing. Consciousness needs healing. So
Mm.
I call them plant medicines.
They don't get upset if you misclassify them.
No.
They're very flexible, right? They don't follow like linear trajectory at all.
Right, they are, but I guess my human psyche was not.
Something to think about is they are devoid of that judgment against themselves. So like it doesn't even matter to them what you call them. Like they've done the healing work essentially to utilize like a self-help tool for the mushrooms. They just are, and they just want to be consumed so that they can help.
Yeah, that's similar, I think, to how the plants, I don't know what the right word there is. Like they just want to experience through us.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
How did you make the transition from using the mushrooms on your own to being a psychedelic guide for others?
I sort of like fell into it. Really, I was trying to convince my friends all the time, like, "Hey, you got to do these mushrooms, but we got to not go out. We got to stay in, and we got to listen to like this specific playlist that will like have words in it. Like you can't understand the words; it's not in English, so it doesn't impact you." And sort of through trying to bring my friends into it, and then they would bring a friend into it, people just started showing up and being like, "Holy shit, you're doing mushrooms in a way that I've never experienced before, and you should really start sharing this with others." And so I began sharing it then with others, and then also went, "Holy shit, I need to study under someone who facilitates this kind of stuff so that I can also have a deeper understanding of what it really means to be a plant medicine facilitator." And I think that's where I believe, Nick, you and I connected through, was my mentor, Hamilton Souther. And so studying under him then on how to facilitate not just for one person, but for large groups as well has been quite the transition. But I also think you sort of discover in the medicine whether or not it's something you're capable of. For me, when I get in the medicine, if I'm with someone else that I know I'm tending to, anything about my own process easily goes to the wayside. And I'm very able to be present and fully functional with the person that I'm with or with the group that I'm with. And in the beginning, I had a partner I was doing group ceremonies with. And she very quickly discovered that while she was in the medicine, she didn't really want to be the responsible facilitator. She wanted to have her own experience. And so I think that was like a key distinction point for how you know if you should be facilitating or not.
That's wise. That's wise. I could say for me, I've only worked one-on-one with people, but you mentioned learning in a group, and that's something that I've been interested in learning on how to is conduct plant medicine ceremonies for a group setting for a while. For me, my own journey, it's been learning how to do it personally first, and then with another individual, and hopefully in the future, a group.
Yeah, that transition for me was pretty slow as well. I've still held small groups, but I'm actually holding my first big group in the greater Los Angeles area in October. So if anyone is interested in coming and joining for that day, please get at me.
Tell us about that.
That'll be at a beautiful property in Topanga Canyon. It'll be an actual daytime event, which I had never really thought of for mushrooms before, but I did recently went to this property and attended one of their ceremonies and loved it. It's going to be a beautiful, really self-reflective, meditative time. The group, we have space for about 10 to 15 participants. And inside the house, we essentially create this beautiful nest where everyone has their own space, and it sort of becomes like a no talking zone during the ceremony. So really going self-reflective. Obviously, if someone needs help, they can flag me, and I'm happy to help. But then there's also little off-shooting rooms where people can go to have more of their own experience. Or if being inside and meditative inside your own space isn't for you either, you can actually go outside, and they have a pool and a sauna, and they're surrounded by the beauty of the Topanga Canyon, like mountains, and it's just gorgeous. So there's places to be outside and nature to interact with. And so I'm so excited to hold that group space there. It's just the property I've been looking for a long time.
Very cool. It sounds lovely.
Yeah. Where are you guys located?
I'm in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania right now.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
both in Pennsylvania, actually. I'm
Okay.
outside of Philadelphia.
Cool. How is the psychedelic revolution going out there?
That's an interesting question. Kind of hard to say, really. I mean, for me, as far as like the psychedelic community goes, the only one that I really participate in is Blue Morpho, and people of Blue Morpho mostly. I've worked with some relatives before, in modern shamanism, and I've held cannabis ceremonies with them, but that was when I was years ago, almost within like my first year of it, close to it. But as far as the psychedelic, what do you call it? Evolution?
Revolution. I think it's really gone by the psychedelic renaissance, but
Just like I like the Renaissance, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would be kind of tough to say. As far as cannabis goes, I mean, cannabis is finally becoming, in Pennsylvania, in terms legally, medicinally, has been legal for, I would say, like, I don't know, 4 years or so, somewhere around there. As far as mushrooms goes, it's still illegal. In New Jersey, cannabis is, considered to be something, as an adult, you can go and decide to buy. And as an adult, you could actually decide to have, if you wanted to just like, I think, actually, I got to be careful on that. Just thinking about like, I don't know, the rigidity and of the law and the like, vague sort of like specificness of it, kind of contradictory of it. I don't know if you could grow plants in Jersey or not, but that's sort of like how it is, in Pennsylvania. Yeah, I would be interested though. Would be kind of cool, I would think, to this is just like sort of like a dream of mine that I've been sharing with people, is I think it would be cool to have like a mushroom retreat in a legal state and see like clinically really what works, and perhaps record what works, maybe what doesn't, and sort of like narrow it in and focus in the practice of it.
Yeah, I love mushroom retreats, and I think that there's many ways that they work. There's, the meditative one I'm getting ready to hold is very self-reflective, but there's also a lot of beauty in like somatic release mushroom ceremonies where you have the ability to get up and move your body and interact with others in this community environment that has a whole different channeling and energy to it. So it can also just be like group by group preference on what works. I also facilitate like psychedelic breakthrough ceremonies for people, and that can turn very much into like a counseling session where we're sitting there talking the entire time and basically doing a whole bunch of mindset reprogramming and sculpting their thoughts to be something new and completely different from what they walked in the door with. And because we're in that state now, their neural pathways start rewiring to this new belief structure, and they're walking out the door having like 10 years of self-help in one session. So there's so many ways that it can work. What are one of your favorites?
One of my favorite psychedelics or plant
Ways
medicine
to
or
do psychedelics in a group setting.
hmm. Well, for me in a group setting, I could only speak as being a participant in the Trinity retreats when they were going around, but sometimes I would like to smoke cannabis periodically throughout the day. And then sometimes I would like to just have like one at night. And then like through it periodically throughout the day, I would have smaller amounts to where it would sort of equal the amount if I were to have like one like ball or whatever, however you want to measure it at night. And yeah, that's sort of how I went about it. And then with the non-psychedelic plants, I would like to pick ones that I find, I've heard actually have, medicinal properties for it, and ones that I've, just heard maybe like a little bit of an inkling, like that it has medicinal properties, and sort of exploring it like I did with Rose, and have conducted dietas for my own, and then been a participant in the group with those, and even ones like turmeric and garlic and rosemary. I remember I had this one tea. Oh my God, I had to like hold my nose and drink it because I put rosemary, turmeric, garlic. I'm pretty sure like parsley and like a lot of it too. It was super, super pungent. I still am remembering the flavor of that. Yeah.
Did you learn from that dieta?
I learned from that dieta um to really seek a variety of different types of I guess, a root being like um the turmeric or the ginger. For sure I had ginger in there too. And there's a different variety of herbs as well, and having that be something consistently that I place within my diet. And then the integration was consistently placing that in my diet,
Yeah, those are all things that we tend to not have as much of as we're supposed to. Sorry for cutting you off, Melissa.
Yeah, no, not at all. Yeah, I'm guilty of that. Well, guilty, I tend to do that too. Like just eat the same thing. It's just so much easier. I actually don't have a lot of experience with psychedelics. I've had one ceremony, maybe like 2 years ago. It was exactly like an ayahuasca ceremony. I think I ate like a gram of mushrooms and I felt like I drank a cup of ayahuasca.
It can be very potent medicine like that.
Yeah, I was surprised.
I'm often impressed how many people come to my ceremonies and then they're like, oh my God, they've done ayahuasca before, but haven't done mushrooms intentionally. And when they do it intentionally, they're like, oh my God, that was so much like ayahuasca. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, it sounds amazing that you could, there's so many different ways to use the medicine, that it's not just like one type of ceremony. It sounds like you could do quite a variety of things. I think you were also sharing that you have a new program coming up.
Yes, launching in August, we'll be launching Awakening, which is an 8-week group coaching program that brings together psychedelics and life coaching. So we'll be tailoring the program to helping you tap into the deepest parts of your authenticity through also the help of psychedelics. And so the program kind of goes through building self-awareness and play, and gets into parts work and shadow work and inner child work to eventually emotional mastery. And then about halfway through the program, we'll mix in psychedelics and talk about how to intentionally use them as part of your practice, whether that's a one big ceremony or whether that's microdosing, how to incorporate that as part of your consistent healing journey. And then we'll integrate from that and get into some mental reprogramming and thought sculpting, the way that I like to do with my clients, to really help drive in these new ways of being that you didn't obviously come to the table with, that own your authenticity so that you can start to be like a phoenix rising from the ashes. And how that then helps you harness your primal power. And it's really like this fire within us, this energy channel that gives you that unwavering worthiness that it takes continuous stoking, like a fire that needs to not go out. And so how to ultimately walk away with the knowledge from that, sitting with the mushrooms and stoking your inner fire to really be in alignment in your authentic place, owning who you are and having everything come more naturally to you instead of fighting so fucking hard for it. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss on your podcast.
You're good.
Okay.
All right, cool.
That sounds rich. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so excited about it. Just recently did a big restructuring of my courses and my coaching program for this year. And so something I'm really excited to just start helping groups at lower price points be able to utilize the medicine with intention, because, you know, psychedelic coaching is my strength, my background, my driving force, and sharing that. So after that, there will be other programs coming that'll be geared towards like entrepreneurs or relationships and things like that. But I'm excited to start with authenticity because that's also one of my core concepts.
Yeah. I also think that authenticity as a principle is definitely a core principle to really have to define for clarity around, you know, what the intentions are, and to, you know, continuously progress in the transformation to just become better and better and better. And yeah, how would you define authenticity? And I think that there's probably many ways to define it. I don't think there's a right or wrong way to define it, just your way of defining it. And whoever listening to your own authenticity, but how would you define it?
For me, it's a radical acceptance of all your parts. It's a radical acceptance of everything in your history. And it's also the choice to continue to grow from that, to continue to be on a path of essentially that self-love, that unwavering worthiness. And when you are authentic, it's really that owning, of who you are. But I think on top of that, you should also be on a path of seeking to evolve, right? Like it's not really, I guess you could be super authentic if you're like an alcoholic and you're like, I'm an alcoholic and that's just the way I am. But what I would strive to push people towards is owning, for instance, alcoholism, and then also choosing to grow and evolve from that. And as you do the healing work, owning and accepting and loving that story, that shadow is a part of yourself, and releasing its hold from you so that in your authentic expression of who you are, like, you know your demons, you know your shadows, you've confronted them, you're looking at them continuously. It doesn't mean they don't continue to rear their ugly heads. I mean, we get triggered all the time, but by owning yourself authentically, you can also navigate those more easily. And so, yeah, that deep, authentic expression of ourselves also allows for those around us to authentically be themselves. Like I'm super weird, and I'm super nerdy, and I'm super artistic, and I'm super exaggerative. And I know my friends being around me, it's allowed them to drop into deeper expressions of who they are. And so really, when we sit in our authentic power, it gives everyone else around us the ability to do the same. And we're all here to walk our one path, the thing that we came here to do. And like, you don't need me to try and be you. I don't need you to try and be me. Like, I need you to be exactly who you are. And I need to be exactly who I am, so that we can all do what we came here for. Yeah.
Yeah, what you're saying, you know, a safe place for me to be me and a safe place for you to be you, and really expounding upon and learning those teachings of Blue Morpho and Sanctuary, and utilizing sanctuary, a sanctuary type consciousness, to be able to give people a safe place for them to be them. Yeah, I think that's something really awesome and
Mm.
beautiful in this world. I mean, how often is it like, I mean, not to like, I don't want to focus on the negative, but like there are certain places that I've experienced, where it's like you gotta like, I don't know, like if it's like certain professional settings, go and like, maybe like be a professional. Like there's some topics that I don't know might not be so easily discussed. Like who knows? Like for instance, think about like, I don't know, 20 years ago, if you were to like go into like a regular job and be like, yo, I used cannabis this weekend and like I had a blow through experience, they'd probably look at you and be like, okay, pothead. Like,
Yeah, I agree. Use some discernment. I don't go walking up to cops and say, "Hey, let me tell you about the psychedelic ceremony I'm holding next weekend." Um, but for me personally, I've found psychedelics are what I am most passionate about. And even as a massage therapist before I was a coach, people would ask me, "Oh, what did you get up to this weekend?" And I would often be like, "I had a powerful psychedelic ceremony." And I got away from the fear and the discomfort of telling people what I was really up to, and instead just told them my truth and owned my truth in a respectful way. Like I wasn't always like, "Oh my gosh, I went to the fifth dimension and I saw this praying mantis alien and got to sit with these monkey species and they took me like these, and I have done those things. But using discernment and just like, yeah, I went to Peru and I did ayahuasca, and consistently being surprised at how many people, their reaction wasn't, "Oh my God, you did what?" But their reaction was, "Oh shit, I'm really interested in that. Can you tell me more?" And I think so many times we hide parts of ourselves because we're worried about being judged, or we're worried that other people may turn us in, or other people may have it out for us, or we're going to lose opportunities because of what we believe in. And I think as long as you show up to the table respectfully, using discernment on how much to reveal and having ownership over what it is that you're doing, you'd be surprised how many people are willing to accept and explore new ideas and thoughts. But if people don't know that people like you and I are out there doing psychedelics, they think they know no one. And in fact, they probably know a lot more people who are partaking than they are aware of.
yeah, it's interesting around sort of the what would you call it? It's like the lingo we use, like, I don't know, psychedelic experience or like breakthrough, things like this. I've noticed though, if you, for me anyway, when I've rephrased it, sort of like in that sort of professional setting, when I've rephrased it to, I've had a really transformative experience. And then actually I was told this, it was really interesting, but then I was told like to say that and then to like ask like, I don't know, sort of like not mundane, but just like, normal question of like, hey, what was the Phillies score?
Mm.
Within the same sentence of each other, with the people that I would, let in to certain experiences that I've had. And it's interesting because you find out who are the ones that really want to actually hear about it, because they'll actually, inquire about it from you to
Yeah.
know more.
I mean, I prefer the tactic of letting it land and allowing them the time and space to process it and respond. Whatever that response, maybe their response is, so what's the Phillies score? But
Yeah, it was interesting though, just as like a kind of a one-off story. When I had a psychedelic experience of this unknown psychedelic, and if you ask me, I'll tell you all day it's unknown, but
okay.
because it really is unknown for me. I really don't know what it is. But yeah, when when after I started, like, people were asking me like, oh yeah, how was, your weekend that you went away? And like some people, I said like, oh, I had a transformative experience. I had a really, really transformative experience. And then I would say, hey, what's the Philly score? Or what was the Philly score when I was away? And certain people were just like, oh yeah, I don't know. And then like that would be the end of it. Certain people, it would like kind of plant the seed. And then certain people were like, oh, the Philly score was this, they lost. What did you mean?
Yeah, it's certainly another avenue. And I suppose the beauty of life is you can test those things and see what works for your region. Like, I'm pretty blessed to be in California, super liberal. We just passed the Senate, something called SB 58, which would legalize the possession and use of plant medicines in the state of California. So that now goes on to our assembly, but like that's what's happening here in California, and like what's happening in Pennsylvania is very different. And so my conversations here are people are very curious about psychedelics. And I can imagine, depending on where you're located, that conversation might be very different.
Yeah, I agree. It's very different. I think also too, it depends on the person you're talking to. Some language you could use with them might not even, it doesn't even land depending on like kind of like the level of their consciousness, Nick. So depending on who you're conversing with,
Right.
they might not even really be taking in your words.
Mm,
Yeah. What does transformative experience mean to them?
Yeah, true. Yeah, I use that as like a little test to see which people are interested and which people aren't. And then to the people that are interested, I'll sort of like give them like another thing to see if like they would be even interested even more. And then, be like, yeah, I also like, practice cannabis shamanism. And then if they'd be like, oh, that's cool. And then if they would say like, oh, I'm interested in that, and I would just, keep on like telling them about it as like they tell me they're interested in it.
Beautiful. I mean, I'm curious. How did you get yourself to the path of becoming a shaman for cannabis?
Oh, so it was around 2000 and like 14 when I started to hear about ayahuasca shamans and people that use ayahuasca and medico vegelistas, which actually I have a question because I don't know if I'm pronouncing that wrong. If like
You're
I am pronouncing that. I thought I was pronouncing that wrong.
pronouncing it like a gringo.
I am pronouncing it like someone who doesn't know Spanish that well. But but anyway, a person who has a medicinal practice with ayahuasca. And I was thinking like as I was turning to cannabis to essentially sort of like turn away from alcohol. And I mean, in my own sort of fallacies, then in that journey, it was more like, I don't know, maybe abusing cannabis and using it to cope with it. But when I first turned to it again, from the time that I stopped drinking alcohol, then just because I was dealing with some problems with alcohol and I just didn't want to keep consuming it and turn to cannabis. I had just a really mystical experience with it where I used it to astral project. And I did this certain technique of astral projection, and I had a full out of body experience, or however you describe it. Sort of hard to describe. But I went to this sort of like non-linear realm that was just filled with colors and all these just like sort of so hard to describe, but it's like a very colorful realm, and it's sort of like very like if you would like imagine just like water, like I want to know like a very good way to put this in language. it's sort of like gaseous type of realm with all of these kind of colors, and it's all morphing and everything. And I started going towards a white light, and I just like really had the sense of really how beautiful life is. And I was asked if I wanted to go further through the light, and I said, no, I don't. And then I was just, remember then waking up in body. And then the next day, I just remember thinking like, that's the medicine of it. I know it. And after that, for a bit, I would really use cannabis intentionally. And I heard of shamans, in Peru blowing their intentions into um, the ayahuasca brew. And so, I thought like I could just probably do that with some cannabis, like I'm just gonna try it, see what happens. And so I did. And um, I I got really clear, distinct messages from the medicinal energy of the plant itself, and really of looking back on it now, of what I would call the head medicine spirit of cannabis. And Reina Maria communicated with me that to really go on the journey of becoming a cannabis shaman. And then I watched the documentary about ayahuasca because I was interested in it. And I was interested in really like the whole term shaman, and really people that are using plants for a medicinal purpose to heal different types of afflictions. Like I always heard depression has been healed by it, and all different types of these modern afflictions that we have. And so I thought, maybe that could be a way that I could treat that within myself, and potentially, learn how to use to help other people. And it's been a bumpy ride with it, like it hasn't always been, um, it hasn't always been like all of using it as medicine. There have been times where I know that I misused the plant, and I know when I was using it to just sort of cope with my life because I really didn't like the direction my life was going, that then I was misusing it. And then eventually I came to modern shamanism back when that was an online course, and I started using that throughout the entirety of the course, and learning really how to connect with the medicinal forces that are within cannabis, and to really just sort of understand how to use it for those purposes of medicine. And yeah, that's really how I came to it. And uh even earlier today I smoked a little bit. I've actually been experimenting around with it because for me, there's this sort of like for all you cannabis nerds out there, but um when I have like, if I would have like a big dosage and it wouldn't be eaten, or it wouldn't be done through like a water vaporizer, if I would just like sit there and have like a big dose, like a big bowl, or like even like more than that, since mine's like kind of like a small little measurement of a bowl, it like if I would pack that whole thing, like I don't like like the way I feel afterwards, like all that smoke in my lungs at once. It's kind of funny because I used to smoke a lot, but like anymore, I would say that just sort of bothers me. So sort of like experimenting around with it of like, okay, if I take like maybe like, I don't know, a third of a bowl at like one time during the day, and then like another time, and then like another time like before I go and do a journey ceremony, and then go into a journey ceremony with it. And yeah, that's how that's how the practice has been going for me, and how I came to it.
Well,
Yeah.
one thing that really stood out to me from your story was the being in that place where all of the gases are and heading towards this white light. And that's something I've experienced on DMT, or like in ayahuasca specifically on a breakthrough dosage. It was like the first place that I went to was also filled with these different color gases and this bright white light at its core. And I got to like sit there for maybe it was a couple minutes. It felt like an eternity, just like beating. And I remember there was also this like Salvador Dali-esque clock kind of up in the corner spinning, that was kind of this makeshift joke that time was all like, the idea that we thought there was time was like this huge joke. And yeah, I've seen that sort of place too, but probably good that you didn't go through the light. Who would have thought that that would come up on cannabis?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it would have been like, 'cause I never went through. I was too scared. It was like it was a moment of like sort of actually like fear, definitely fear, and I just decided like it's not something I'm interested in. No, please, I don't want to go through that light. And then yeah, just remember like a deep breath and being in body.
Yeah, I know of someone who saw that white light like on ayahuasca. And so she went through it and she got to hang out with all these spirits and things and connect with all these beings. But her body on this planet died. And they actually had to defibrillate her to bring her back. And so
Oh wow.
don't go through the white
Don't go
light
to
on
the
the
light.
medicine.
Just reminded me of Poltergeist.
Mm.
Don't
You know,
head towards the light.
I heard this was when Hamilton was on Paul Chek's podcast of Paul Chek saying that people that he knows actually passed away from doing that sort of concentrated version of DMT, which actually, this, I would like to know how both of you think about this. We have another 15 minutes before we have to go. So perhaps it would be an interesting topic to discuss in these last 15 minutes or so. But you mentioned that California is opening up that it could be legal for anyone to just be carrying any kind of plant medicine. Well, when you mentioned that, I was thinking like, what about ones where it's, like certain ones where if you if you don't have a dosage that is a proper dosage, and you take more than that, like I don't know if like ibogaine or something like that. I mean, I I'm not really sure, but I'm sure there are like certain types of plant medicines out there that taking at a certain dosage could kill you. So I don't know. I just like I thought about that and sort of like I don't know.
I mean, just to add to that real quick, in California, there are parameters on what the legal limit is to possess, and it's low. It's real low. In my opinion, the amount of mushrooms that I've seen legally written in is like not actually even enough to hallucinate. And so I'm like, what are we supposed to do with that? Everyone's going to be, the legal limit's 2 grams. Everyone's going to be walking around with like,
oh geez, that'd be a lot. That'd be a lot for me. Seriously. Oh,
2 grams?
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, I was already seeing the purple dragon at a gram. So yeah.
I mean, I guess it depends on what strain you're talking. I love heroic doses. I've taken like up to 9.5 grams recently. But for my clients, I've been serving penis envy mostly. And for the ones, I just had a woman come to me for the first time a couple weekends ago, and she took 2.5 grams and had a strong experience.
If AI ever takes that out of the content of this conversation of I've just been serving penis envy mushroom, it's gonna
it needs a new title.
It does need a new title.
Also known as PE.
Ah, geez.
What do you think, Melissa?
Oh, I was curious, what was the law? Is it all plant medicines?
It's not all. It covers DMT, ayahuasca, psilocybin. I don't even believe that it covers mescaline because of the scarcity of the cactus, and it doesn't cover bufo either because of the scarcity of the toad. I think it also allows for cambo, and it allows for maybe ibogaine. But it does not do MDMA, and it does not do LSD. So it would be naturally occurring medicines. that in small doses. Yeah. But then it also allows for the facilitation of that. So I think in the same way that Oregon's doing, where you can go to a retreat facility and have someone can possess more than the legal amount in order to facilitate it.
Now, do they register these people? Like, do
Oh,
you
yeah.
have to? Okay.
Yeah.
Distinction,
Yeah. There's
so.
a whole licensure process. So what Oregon is seeing is they have, I think, 4 different categories of licensures. They have one for facilitators, one for facilitation locations, which is really complicated in that it's not allowed to be a location for anything else. So that they're struggling with that in Oregon and with pricing, because for instance, like it's not a place that you can do yoga and serve psilocybin, right? So you can't serve alcohol at the retreat center. There's all these parameters on it. There's also parameters on being a producer of the medicine and then being a vendor of the medicine.
That's really
And I think,
interesting.
yeah, Colorado's looking to follow suit a little bit, but I believe Colorado's legislature also allows for personal possession, but not the ability to buy it. So it's going to be interesting how they kind of navigate that. Everyone thinks that there's just going to be psilocybin stores popping up on every corner, and there's not going to be. Like, people are already in California, I know, starting to sell it. There have been a few stores that have been shut down, and a lot of cannabis delivery places are starting to carry mushrooms, but legally that's not allowed, and it's quite a few years away from being allowed.
I'm just amazed at how, yeah, our state is nowhere near being at that point.
No, our state's slow.
Right.
What
But
is going on in Philadelphia?
you know, with the cannabis being legal, I do see that as a sign to where the wind is blowing, you know.
Slow, it's a very slow blow. I mean,
Yeah, it
there's
is.
no sign of it becoming recreationally legal, even though some surrounding states are.
Yeah, I think it's just like a matter of time. I don't think our government is set up to just move like this. It just takes like, it's just sometimes seemingly too long, you know, but
Yeah, well, there's actually 30 different states around the country that have some sort of psychedelic bill or in the works. Much more actually than, I think there's only 25 or 26 states across the country that have legalized cannabis use in some way, shape, or form. But the psychedelics thing, whether it's, like the state of Texas has a group that they've coordinated now to do research and study into the effectiveness of psychedelics on a government scale, versus Oregon having legalized it, versus, California's got SB 58 in the works. Colorado, passed it, but they're still not legal. So they're working out all that framework now. So there's 30 different states across the country that have some sort of governmental momentum going around psychedelics right now.
Exciting times.
yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
right.
It really is. It's just something that like I think back on, and like even like being in school and like I don't know, the whole DARE program and all of that bullshit. Just like thinking like that somehow, our government had made a weed that is super nutritious and is a medicine illegal, right? So like I remember about, I don't know, what, 3 years ago, I know I could finally, maybe it was like only 2 years ago, I could finally go to the store and buy some hemp seeds and put that in my smoothie, right? And it's like, finally, I can like, legally have this. Thank you. I don't know. I guess that kind of just burns my grits a little bit, but yeah, I guess like bringing it back to the light. I really think that through there being many clinical studies of psychedelics usage and plant medicine usage for healing, different types of afflictions. I think it's really going to be sort of a catalyst for people, really. I often think too about like the veteran community and what could be done about that. I was listening to a podcast earlier today with Sean Ryan, and yesterday too. Actually, I was sort of binging that guy, but he was talking about his experience with psychedelics and ibogaine, and what's it called? 5-bufo. What is that?
I think
5-MeO DMT.
5-MeO DMT, and that one. And yeah, hearing all this is just like sort of it definitely it inspires me to really just have the desire to continue along with these practices. I've often learned like how many years it really takes to become proficient at it.
Hmm.
And I would still say like I'm working on getting to that level.
Yeah, my personal choice for veterans actually steps away from the plant medicines and more into the psychedelics realm. And I'm a huge fan of MDMA for veterans, specifically because MDMA has this ability to open your heart and get you in a place that kind of detaches you from your ego. And in that place, you're more receptive to information. And because your heart is so open, specifically for veterans, they can go back and look at these traumatizing experiences in a way that doesn't re-traumatize them.
Mm.
And I think psilocybin also has strong properties like that, but MDMA is just the absolute powerhouse, in my opinion, around going into trauma, looking at it from a place that literally almost prevents you from being able to be re-traumatized because you're so open and loving. And so you get to actually send love and understanding and compassion at a situation that may have been traumatizing and release those energetics that it holds upon you.
If there was a listener out there who really wanted to do that, but through a legal avenue, do you know of any?
Legal, you're going to want to look for some clinical trials.
Clinical trials, yeah.
I know MAPS just passed phase 3 of their clinical trials with MDMA. So it is something that's being written now into acceptance by the government and the FDA. But I don't believe there's anywhere legal now.
So you'd have to hit up MAPS maybe.
Yeah.
See if there's a legal avenue there.
Talk to someone who facilitates, and they possibly know someone who knows someone who facilitates MDMA.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd probably want to do it the legal route and be like, hey, MAPS, you got this thing for me, please? Yeah.
You'd be surprised. I know a couple MDMA facilitators personally, and they're people I would absolutely trust and go to and have sent clients to who are interested in MDMA. It's not terribly different from being outside of the psilocybin or the cannabis context, but it involves a lot more talk. So it's much more therapy based than, like, you wouldn't really take someone who's had those issues and then sit them down and tell them to meditate for the entire experience, like I can do on psilocybin or like we do on ayahuasca. You'd really, the beauty of it is having someone else there who can guide them through those memories and how to create new ones and how to release them and how to forgive and how to let go.
Yeah, it's sorry, Melissa, go ahead.
Oh no, that's fine. I was saying that's really powerful. I didn't really know that was a use for MDMA.
Veterans. Yeah.
All right. To think we used to party on it.
Yeah.
I've never partied on it, but I heard once that it was through a podcast that I listened to that they were having great success with veterans and MDMA. And then, actually, we got 2 minutes left, but I think it's actually very relevant to talk about too, of things like this. So, like I said, I heard that there was benefits. I think it was what's his name, Rick Doblin, the guy was he a founder of MAPS? Pretty sure he was on Rogan, one of them.
Yeah, he's been on Rogan a couple times, I think.
But
recently.
he was talking about the effectiveness of MDMA on our veterans. And then I was driving on the one highway by my house, and it was saying like fake pills kills, and then it was like, and it basically gave like a list of them, and then it lumped in MDMA and fentanyl together. And then I thought, like, is this, and this person, you know, could just like go and advertise on like a billboard this, and maybe have done this amount of research on the whole topic, and then just like paints this whole thing as like, yep, these are all bad, not even knowing like perhaps like, hey, that one thing on there might be a mistake, and you mistakenly put it on there. And maybe some people have, you know, had tainted pills or whatever, but when it's done, you know, clinically, that these are the clinical benefits, and that you're eliminating all of these things by doing it clinically, rather than just some, you know, Joe Schmo along the street, you know, selling MDMA. And when I saw that, number one, I got kind of upset at like the person who had put that on the billboard, and then the people who are doing that with MDMA, knowing that, you know, there's people out there that are saying that it is truly, you know, helping benefit people. And then I often think, like, is this how, you know, cannabis was made illegal back in the day, or something along those lines, of like where there's real benefit when used properly by someone, and just like lumping like everything into like that kind of category. So I guess with some things, I don't know, I think it needs to be handled properly. Even to people that are allowed to just like post things like that, you got, for them too, they got to like handle those things properly, because like seeing that that's disinformation, whether you, I don't, you, which way you want to spin it. It just seems like that's like, that in and of itself is like an example of a disinformation campaign.
I mean, I think you just opened a whole can of worms about something a little different, which is fentanyl, the fentanyl problem in America, which I think is perhaps what that billboard was seeking to address. But I am not a pill taker, so I luckily don't struggle with the fentanyl issue. Luckily, mushrooms are pretty obvious usually that they're sprinkled in fentanyl. But it probably is a legitimate concern when you purchase MDMA not in a clinical setting, that, you know, it could be fentanyl. And I don't know if you saw the Dr. Phil episode with Joe Rogan, but it was addressed a lot about fentanyl and how all of these younger kids are buying pills off of Snapchat, for instance. And so many of these pills that come through, up to about 40% of them, the DEA estimates, are laced with fentanyl, like lethal doses of fentanyl. And so kids are going on there to buy an Adderall. They're going on there to buy an Oxycontin, a Xanax, like all of these things that, you know, there was one girl who bought something one time just to help her sleep, and she took a quarter of the pill that came for her and died because it had such a lethal dose of fentanyl in it. And so, I think it's a bigger can of worms that you opened with the billboard that it sounds like we're out of time to address. But
Yeah, it's all good though. What, Melissa?
I said I didn't realize that. I did not hear that Dr. Phil episode.
I didn't either. Now
Fantastic.
I gotta actually plan to go and watch that, because I want to watch it.
It's fantastic. Yeah, he really scared the shit out of me about fentanyl. And I also like to use ketamine as a tool, and it's a powder. And so I luckily trust and know who I buy it from really well. And I know that they've done it and tested it before I receive it. But I, sometimes want my own test kit, because what if I do want to take MDMA? And I think everyone should be very conscious and very aware, because it's a huge problem in our country right now, that anything that is a powdery substance could potentially contain fentanyl, and beware.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really safe message to be putting out there. Like with MDMA, probably, so the best way could be going through the clinical trials of it, and maybe becoming a participant in of those trials, and that way, like, it's being done properly, and it could give you peace of mind knowing that it's not going to be laced with anything.
And they sell fentanyl test kits. Like, just Google it, fentanyl test kits. They're available. Little things to just drop on your drugs, make sure that they're fentanyl free.
Yeah, if if you're doing those kinds of things.
Right.
But yeah, yeah. Yeah, I
Well,
just want to say how
on
sad
that
that
low
is.
note,
Uh,
I'm glad though, Barret, you shared some ways that we could all stay safe with using our medicines of choice. It's been wonderful to get to know you a little bit more today. I'm curious if you want to share anything before we end today.
Yeah, just super excited about my 8-week course coming up that launches in August. For anyone who would like more information on that, you can go to barrettpearlman.com, BARRETTPERLMAN.com, and I'll have information there for you. And would love to have you in the course.
Yeah, awesome. That sounds like an amazing course. And your participants are going to be so lucky to be working with you and to find that fire within. I'm excited for everybody.
Thank you,
Thank you
Barret.
so much.
Yeah. And with
Thank
that,
you.
thank you so much for being here, Barret. Thank you, Nick. And if you enjoyed this podcast, we would appreciate if you give us a like. And that's going to be it for today. Bye.
Bye.